My name's Linda Block, and I work just around the corner for the lead poisoning prevention program. And just for your information, I was a biology major when I was an undergraduate and a chemistry minor, but I did that just because we had to take a lot of chemistry anyway, and I thought it would look good on the resume. So, and I think it's helped a little bit, but I was a biology major and a chemistry minor. And then I've done lots of environmental education since then. Well, I've started off in a laboratory, actually, chopping off rat heads and looking at their brains. Decided I really didn't want to do that. Sorry. And then I got into environmental education. I worked with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and I took groups of people out on a boat on the water, and we caught crabs and fish and eels and did water quality testing and looked at urban influences on water. And then I worked at a nature center for a while and did some team building and some programs for really young children. And then I went to Houston for a while. I worked on air quality issues in a really polluted section of Houston. And then I came here and I did some water issues, and now I'm doing lead poisoning prevention. And in there I got my master's in environmental studies. So just to give you a little bit of idea how the path goes, and don't always know where you're going to end up. You just sort of start to take the path, and then jobs often lead to other jobs, and here I am. So I work down the hall, and this is kind of an interesting program because we do outreach. We're not really, lead poisoning prevention isn't really a research program, and I don't really teach any classes, but I'm in the community a lot, trying to teach people about lead, going to people's houses, seeing if there's lead hazards around, educating people that are working on old houses, how to not poison themselves, those kinds of things. And I like to be interactive today, so I'll probably be throwing out lots of questions. I had a few themes as I was thinking about how I wanted to approach this class, because you all are a little different audience than just a group of folks out in the community. You guys have been studying, everyone here has been studying about lots of different environmental impacts. So I thought one of my themes is that the government doesn't always protect us from hazardous substances. Even though we would like to believe that they are out for our best interests and are protecting our health, that sometimes the science might not be there, or the science might not be right, or the money is really good. And so maybe environmental protection doesn't happen quite the way it could. That lead is just one example. I know about lead, and so I'll be talking about lead, but you can think of this as just one example of a chemical, a metal that's in our environment that has effects on us. And because of some decisions that were made years and years ago, it's still out there affecting us. And then the other thing is just lead is in a lot of different products. And I just want to give you a little taste of some of those places where you might find it. So what's lead? It's an element, yep. It's a metal, good. Where does it come from? In general, where do you find metals? In the earth, right, you have to mine for them. And I wasn't really sure where our metals, where in the United States lead comes from, but there's actually a town in Kansas called Galena, Kansas, and there's another Galena, Missouri, and actually lead when lead comes from underneath the ground, it's in the form of something called galena, which is actually lead sulfide. And then they have to take the sulfide off in order to have just the plain lead metal. And so you actually find it in Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Idaho, Utah, Montana, and Wisconsin. I didn't know we had lead in all those places. In other countries, Germany, France, Romania, Austria, Belgium, Italy, Spain, Scotland, England, Australia, and Mexico. So there's lots of places where they mine it out from underneath the ground. And is this a recent discovery? Not at all. 6500 BCE, lead was discovered in Turkey. So that was a long time ago. It's been around for a long time. Anyone ever hear about the fall of the Roman Empire? Have you heard any claims of connection with lead poisoning? Yeah, the aqueducts were made out of lead piping, and most people believe that the fall of the Roman Empire and why so many people went crazy back then was because there was a lot of lead poisoning. They used lead in their wines, and they used the more high class you were, the more lead objects you had. There was an emperor that had some kind of fountain where he would get his water out of the fountain, and it was made of lead. So the effects have been around for a long time. All right, so my question is lead bad for us? I've got a bottle of vitamins that I was taking a little while ago, and it's got a bunch of metals listed in here. It says iron, magnesium, zinc, selenium, copper, chromium. Is lead one of those metals that we naturally find in our bodies? How many people say, yeah, you normally find some lead in our bodies? How many people say, nope, no, we shouldn't find any lead? How many people say, I have no clue? All right, you're very brave. No, there should be no lead in our bodies naturally. It's not something you would ever find in a vitamin. So if I took your blood today, ideally I should find 0 micrograms per deciliter of lead in your blood. And that would be very surprising if I really found 0. So do you all know of any places where lead can be found? Yes?
Water.
In water? Okay, how might it get in water?
Pipes.
Okay, maybe there's some old lead pipes. Maybe there's some lead solder, and it's getting in the drinking water. Good. Where else might you find lead? In paint. Paint that you buy today?
I think they're not supposed to have it in it's possible.
Okay, so she said they're not supposed to have it in there today, but maybe. Any other thoughts on paint? I want to paint my house. Can I go out and buy some nice lead-based paint to put on the outside of my house, the inside of my house? He shakes his head no. No? How about 1970? Could I then? Yeah. Up until 1978, I could go to, well, there was no Lowe's. I could go to the hardware store, buy my gallon of lead-based paint, and come home and paint my house with it. In 1978, they finally decided, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the history of that whole process. So from 1978 on, when you go to the hardware store to buy paint for your house, there should be no lead in it. Does anyone know if there are any lead paints out there now? Anyone do any auto body repair work? Yeah? In ceramics, there are some lead-based paints. Okay, so glazes are actually paints.
Glazes and also China paints that
Okay, so in the art world, there still are lead-based paints. I was actually surprised the other day. I wasn't so surprised about oil paints, but I went to Ben Franklin and I actually picked up what says artist's watercolor paints, and they have lead in them too. And they're not even required to have labeling, but these ones did. These did. So some artist paint have lead, auto body paint has lead, some industrial paints have lead. Paint that they use on the roadways, the striping, that's still leaded paint. Any idea why we used leaded paint in the first place? You probably wouldn't know, but it was a really durable paint. It was good, stood up to weather. It was mold and mildew resistant. So if you're in the bathroom and all that steam's coming up on the walls, and if you use lead-based paint, you wouldn't get as much mold and mildew on your walls. So it was good stuff. Yes?
like so many houses that were painted pre-1978 still have lead-based paint on their walls.
Yep. It was really good stuff, and it's still there. Sometimes you can look at how it cracks on the wall and kind of predict that it might be lead-based paint just by how it looks. But other times you wouldn't even know. But yep, it's still there.
We just purchased a house that was pre-1978 and had lead-based paint, and we also had an infant, so we had to pretty much paint the whole thing over to house paint it.
So if there is a bunch of lead-based paint in a house, there are some ways to make sure that it's not hazardous. That's a great question. Suppose this wall right here was painted with lead-based paint. Is this hazardous right now? Okay, she shakes her head no. Why do you say no? You're right. Probably. Okay, it's not chipping, it's not peeling. Probably I'm not going to come up and lick the wall or anything. Now, if there was some old lead-based paint, it could eventually kind of come out onto the surface, even if this was latex. And you might end up with some lead dust on the surface. So it's not 100% safe, but if there was some other paint on top of the lead-based paint, not chipping, not peeling, in general, it's pretty safe. Now, you mentioned encapsulant. That's actually a special paint that's very, very thick, and that wouldn't allow any lead dust to come through those layers. And it's a very expensive paint. But that's a little bit different. So in general, that's not a hazard.
Unless you have a toddler that will lick the wall.
Or unless you, well, and that brings me to this point. Suppose this desk right here were painted with lead-based paint. Is this a hazard? Thinking about what Brandy just said about small children. Why? Okay, if it were to chip off or peel off, it's a little bit closer to you. How would that affect you?
I mean, I'm not looking at the desk or anything, but I guess like if you have some kind of contact with touching it, I don't know.
Dust.
Okay, if you had if it was chipping and peeling and you were touching it as an adult and put your hands in your mouth, or maybe put your sandwich on it, possibly. But thinking about young children, this is within mouth reach and hand reach of a young child. So this would be especially, this could be a hazard because it's within reach of a child. And if it were chipping and peeling, it could be a risk for you. I'll talk a little bit more about how it gets in your body and where it goes. But so if you're exposed to chipping paint or dust, and the dust is the big culprit, it can get into your mouth. You can breathe it in. It could be a hazard. How about if this surface right here was painted with lead-based paint? Is that a hazard? Why, yes.
Somebody scrape on the wall and chip paint and close and open it.
Okay, it could be a friction surface. Actually, this door closes really easily. It's not rubbing, so this particular door is probably not a hazard. But you know those old houses where you're like, ugh, and you get the door open and it sticks and it rubs? You're going to have lead dust where those surfaces are rubbing together. And again, the dust gets on the floor. If you have young children, if you have pets, it can get into mouths and into the body. So back to our wall here. We said this wasn't a hazard, really. But tomorrow I decide, this room really needs a lot more light. I'm going to cut a big hole in this wall right here. Is that a hazard? Why? Okay, the lead paint's exposed. What else happens when I'm cutting through the wall? You're creating a lot of dust. So as soon as you cut through the wall, the lead paint surfaces are exposed. You've got dust. The dust flies all over the house, unless you do it right, of course. And so you could create a hazard. Yeah?
If you were just to paint a wall with it, would the fumes be bad, or is it just the dust?
The fumes, no. It wouldn't, no, not if you were just painting with lead-based paint. If you were burning lead-based paint, yes. Or if you were soldering with lead-based solder, yes. But the fumes themselves, not that I'm aware of. Okay, so lead-based paint, if it's maintained and in good shape, might not be a hazard. When might it be a hazard? If you have some contact with it?
It's not maintained.
If it's not maintained and it's chipping and peeling? If you decide you're going to do a big renovation project and scrape and peel and cut through the walls. Okay, so then that would be a hazard. Anyone here live in a place that's older than 1978? Wow, okay. How many of you are renting? Okay. How many of your landlords said anything to you about the possibility of lead-based paint when you moved into the house? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many of you who rent older houses, your landlord didn't say anything to you when you rented the house about lead? So about 4 and 4, half and half. It's the law that if you're renting a place older than 1978, your landlord is required Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Required to give you one of these brochures that tells you that about lead in your home, and required if he or she knows that there's lead in the home, required to tell you. They might not know if there's lead in the home. In that case, they would say, well, this house is older than 1978. It might have lead. I'm not really sure if it does. But here's the brochure. Sign your name so I can be protected from liability problems. So if your landlord hasn't done this, it might be a good conversation to have with your landlord. Anybody here have young children? Okay, just one. All right. So, so we've established that there's lead paint, lead dust is a big issue. Who would be at risk? Who would be the highest risk, do you think, for getting exposed?
Children.
Okay, children. Why children?
They come in contact with these things.
Okay, they might come in contact. How? How might they come in contact? They put their hands in their mouth. You guys have little brothers, sisters, cousins. Everything's going in the mouth. Hands, toys, your hands, everything. Okay, where do little kids hang out? What's that? Everywhere. Like, okay, so they're kind of all over the place in the house. They're crawling around the floor. I can't really get over to the window, but they're over on the windowsill. Would lead paint on a window be a problem? What happens on windows? Up and down, up and down, up and down. So you got some friction. Is that a problem? Yeah, you're going to end up with lead dust. So kids are holding on to they love to look out of the window. So they're holding on to the windows, everything in their mouth. And they're still developing. Children between the ages of 0 and 5 years old, their nervous system is developing. Their blood-brain barrier hasn't quite formed yet. So all their systems are developing, and you add a toxin in at that point, and there could be some big effects. Yes?
If you were to paint a window with lead, I don't know, with like the sun coming in, like the heat energy, like would it break it up more, like have it burn more?
That's a good question. I imagine it would decompose a little faster. You might get more dust as the paint starts to break down and chalk. I'm not 100% sure on that, though. Good question. So we said young children are at risk, and I would say ages 6 and younger. Who else is at risk? Talked about old homes. Animals could be at risk. Construction workers, thank you. The folks that are in the house doing the renovation project. I just met with a painter yesterday. He came up to my office to talk to me. He has done extensive work in old homes and never took lead seriously. He's probably in his 50s now and has lots of health problems. And now he's finally looking back and going, might this be connected with lead? I've met a lot of painters that just go into a home, they're not really aware, and they do, they're scraping, peeling, painting, or remodelers. So people that work with lead, auto body workers. The other group there's 2 other groups I think of. Pregnant women, because it can get passed to a baby. And I'm noticing levels of lead in immigrants. Other countries have more sources of lead. They're not as protected. And so I'm seeing a little bit higher levels in immigrants.
And I think the water in other countries, I know Mexico, they have like more of the water than the water.
Right, and I don't know about their piping. I'm trying to learn more about sources in Mexico in particular.
What about the possibility of many of those countries using leaded gasolines?
It's phasing out. Mexico phased lead out of gasoline in 1997. We got it out of our gasoline in the mid-'80s. And there's actually a schedule of all the different countries and when they're phasing it out. So some are still using leaded gas. And by the way, if you're a NASCAR fan, they still use leaded gas. So if you're,
What's the benefit of having lead in gasoline anyway?
it's a lubricant, from what I understand. So it adds some lubricant value. So I'm not much of an artist, but I wanted to give you an idea. Okay, we're talking about lead, it's bad, blah, blah, blah. What's the big deal? How does lead get in our bodies again? You can breathe it in from dust, ingest it, right. You know, you actually chew, kid might chew on a surface, or we might be doing a construction project and then eat a sandwich or go smoke a cigarette and not wash our hands. Okay, so it either goes through our mouth or in our nose. We don't really absorb it through our skin. NASCAR fuel, yes, actually, it's in a form you could absorb it through your skin, but in general, we don't absorb it. So we get it in our mouth, it goes into our gastrointestinal system, and from there, up to half of it might enter into your bloodstream, and the other part gets excreted naturally. So you pee it out, you poop it out, it's in your hair, it's in your fingernails, it's in your sweat. Your body says, no, this isn't natural, and it gets rid of it. If you breathe it in, it's going into your lungs, and from there, about 70% goes into your bloodstream. Which of these two methods are adults most likely to ingest lead or get lead in their body? Through the nose, right. And children?
No.
Through the mouth, exactly. Okay, so it's getting into our bloodstream. Some of that gets excreted. That's good. We want to get it out of there. But, you know, if you're exposed, you could be exposed to one big dose all at once, get an acute case of lead poisoning, or you might just be exposed a little bit over time, which is more ordinary. So a lot of it's in our, some of that is in our blood. From the blood, it can stay in the blood, it can get into our bones, or it can go into soft tissue. All right, well, the good news is that if it gets in your blood, it doesn't stay there real long. Half-life in blood's about a month. So you were out doing work on a house for the last 2 weeks. It had lead-based paint. You inhaled a bunch of it. You might go and get a blood test right afterwards. Your blood lead level will be pretty high. You come back 2-3 months later. You're not near that source of lead anymore. Your blood lead will drop. Okay, but 70 to 85% is going in your bones. Half-life in bones is about 25 years. So, you know, you're a renovator. You've been at this for 10 years. You're probably going to have lead in your bones the rest of your life. Is that a problem? Well, it doesn't just stay there. It can come out of your bones. And in the United States, who do you think, what population, what age group has the highest lead levels? We talked a little bit about who's at risk. Who do you think, what age group would have the highest lead levels? The elderly? Why the elderly?
We've had a longer exposure time to products that were like the leaded fuels and the leaded paint, everything fully established regulations to control.
Okay, so you're saying the elderly because there were a lot of lead sources a long time ago that we didn't control, like leaded gasoline and leaded paint and lead solder and all those things. And you're actually right. It's children who are age 1 to 5 and adults over 60. Why not adults who are 50? I mean, they probably were exposed too. It goes back to what's happening in the bones. lead goes into your bones, and when you get old, your bones start to break down. Well, that lead starts to come back out again. And some of the things we just consider old age, like cataracts, high blood pressure, dementia, kidney problems, they now are connecting with lead. They're saying, well, maybe those aren't just normal things that happen when we get old. Maybe there's a connection between some of the things we've been exposed to through our lives and what we're seeing in our elderly population. So those construction workers are like, oh, come on, forget this lead stuff. It doesn't bother me. I'm fine. I don't know. You know, are they fine? I don't know. When else? Well, you probably don't know. Another time where bones break down is a little bit is during pregnancy. When you're pregnant, your body wants to give calcium to your child. And calcium and lead are very much alike. So if you've got a bunch of lead in your bones and you've got some calcium in your bones and you're having a baby, your body actually will try to get rid of the lead and it will send the lead to the fetus. So that's why pregnant women are especially at risk too, because if they have high lead, they can pass it on.
Isn't that harmful to the infant?
It is. It is.
Causing a defect?
It sure does. Has anyone had any experience knowing anyone with lead poisoning? Anybody? No? Okay. Yes, it can affect a child's growth and development. They can have slower speech. They can have hearing problems. They have lower IQ. They've noticed some behavioral problems later, like more aggressive behavior as they get older. It causes brain damage. It reshapes neurons. It blocks neurotransmission. It competes with calcium, and calcium plays a role in the opening of membranes to allow chemicals to pass back and forth. So it has a lot of physiological effects, and they're permanent. I mean, here it says it affects our nervous system, our cardiovascular system, and our kidneys. So imagine being 11 months old with a high level of lead in your body. Those effects are going to be permanent. And here's the other places where it can go: kidneys, liver, brain, and bone marrow. So it's scary to me. I mean, it's in our bodies. It's not going anywhere. Questions about this? Yeah.
What if anything can be done once, like, you reduce doses of that, and you have it in your body?
So what can you do if you have these high levels and it's gotten into your bones? That's a good question. Let me share a little bit about levels and what's considered harmful. There's a few ways you can see how much lead is in your body. What would you want to test? Okay, you might want to test your bones, blood, and actually hair is another way to test. The most common method we use is a blood test, because a small child goes to the health department, they do a little finger prick, squeeze out a drop of blood, and they can analyze it. So, and this is related to blood. I'll explain in a minute. Bones, I think, would be a great idea, especially for a woman who's pregnant. You know, if I've been exposed to lead and I'm pregnant, I might want to know how much lead is in my bones so I know what's going to happen. Right now, there's only a few researchers that have the ability to test bones. It's not a common test yet. And hair, yes. Has anyone had a hair analysis? You can have your hair analyzed. It can tell you all sorts of different metals and chemicals that you've been exposed to. And that would be interesting if someone wanted to do a project to have their own hair tested.
What's the time depth for a hair sample? And how far back can you record exposure?
It's a good question. It's a more historic exposure. I don't know the exact time frame.
It's longer
Longer than blood.
than blood, for sure.
Blood is more immediate exposure, and hair is more of a long-term exposure.
More so than bone.
Bone would also be long-term, but we don't have a way to test it. So when I said, I'm going to explain a little bit about these levels, and I said the government isn't always out there protecting us, and I'm going to explain that in a minute too. Okay, so this is blood lead levels. You go to the health department, they prick your finger, they take your blood, they analyze it. It's in micrograms per deciliter of lead. So right now, we say that if a child tests 20 micrograms per deciliter of lead in their blood or more, it's considered poisoned. I say child, but actually, in general, adults would be same thing in general, because there's some exception for workers. Between 10 and 19, we say it's an elevated level. If it's less than 10, most of the time those children get ignored. And I'll get back to your question about what to do when it's high. I haven't forgotten that. Don't let me forget it. Okay, so right now, anything that's 10 or higher we say is elevated, and we do something about it. Okay, let's look at the wisdom that we've had over time. This is a history of what's been considered elevated in the past. Back in the 1960s, they said, unless your level is 60 micrograms per deciliter, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Go home. Don't call me tomorrow. Then in 1971, they said, okay, maybe that's a little bit high. They lowered it down to 40. In 1978, they lowered it down to 30. In 1985 to 25. Back in 1991, which is already almost 15 years ago, they lowered it to 10. And since that time, there's been all this research showing that levels less than 10 cause drops in IQ, like 8 IQ points. They've been showing that there can be behavioral effects in these lower levels. And all the doctors that I've talked to all agree that these lower levels are a problem. But the official number has stayed at 10. And the CDC gives some excuses. They say, well, you can't really treat it when it's less than 10. And, well, the tests aren't real accurate when you get to these lower numbers. And we're not really sure what number is safe. Do we say 2? Do we say 7? We're not really sure, so we're going to leave it at 10. So, you know, are we truly protecting ourselves by keeping this at 10? I think we could do better. I'm happy to say that our program responds when children test between 5 and 9. Because we know that low levels have an effect. And we know that if we don't do something when a child is a level 7, we might come back next week and they're an 18. And then, you know, that's not being very proactive. So we actually respond, and we'll go to a house and try to identify the sources of lead when children test down here in these lower levels. Questions, thoughts?
Charlotte, turn it on. We'll switch on the phone.
This power.
Yeah.
Okay. Is the government just like ignoring like all the research that we've been doing on this, like to give us more money to like create something that would get the lead out of us?
Well, I don't really know the answer. I mean, I think they're acknowledging that the research is out there. I think they're acknowledging that there's health effects lower than 10 and that we should be proactive. But they're not putting the money into doing anything about it. Right now, health departments will respond when children test 10 or higher. And because we've gotten lead out of gasoline and because we've gotten rid of lead pipes, we're not seeing as many poisoned children. Actually, in Buncombe and Henderson County last year, we didn't have any poisonings. But we had some elevated, and we had a whole lot of kids down here. My observation is that these people at the health department that are supposed to respond, they have so many other obligations like testing restaurants to make sure they meet code and daycare centers and all these other things, that if they don't have a whole bunch of kids that they have to follow up on, they have more time to do other stuff. So if we lowered these levels, they might be out there doing more lead again, and there is expense involved with that. So I don't really know the answer.
Question for you, but I'll wait for the microphone and they'll get back over. So,
Oh, okay. So one of the questions I have then is for the low-level exposure, what are the common sources of lead that you find when you go to these places? Is it primarily the paint, or are there other sources that you identify? And what's the overall, or maybe not overall, but average cost for a household to correct those problems?
That's a great question. So what do we normally find when we go to houses, and how expensive is it? Well, let me... Okay, normally when we go to a house, we inspect the house for lead. We're going to look at paint, we'll look at water, we'll look at dust, especially if they just did a project, and soil. And if you've got an old house, chipping and peeling, it could get in the soil. This is an XRF, X-ray fluorescence machine. And basically the way this works, it sends X-rays through various levels of paint. And in a matter of about a minute, when it beeps at me, it will tell me if there is any lead-based paint in any layer on this wall. Okay, the reading was 0.00 negative. So no lead in that paint at all.
So no excuses for not coming to class.
Even some of the paint we sell today has some lead in it. It's not enough to be considered lead-based. But sometimes we'll get a reading that shows there's some lead, but it's not over the level that we say is lead-based. Okay. So that's one of the main things we look for is lead in paint. Then we ask the family a whole bunch of questions. Say we go back to the water. Okay, house is older than 1978. What are your pipes made out of? They may say, I don't know, I have no clue. Or maybe we just redid the house, everything is PVC. Or they might say it's galvanized. So depending on the answer, I might suggest that they do a water test. We do that for free if they have children in their home and it's an older home. If they don't have children in their home and they want to get it tested, the EQI lab will analyze water. I think it's $24. So we ask about water pipes. Soil, if we see there's a bunch of chipping and peeling paint, and then there's just loose dirt with no vegetation on it, and the kids really like to play in that area, we would do a soil test. Very simple. Basically, take a plastic spoon, scoop up some soil, send it to EQI lab, and that would be free, again, if they had young children in the house. If not, I think it's $14. If they okay, well, let's talk about some other, last thing, construction. If they just did a big renovation project, we could come in and test a bunch of places for dust. Basically, it's like a handy wipe. We wipe it along the surface in a bunch of different directions in a foot-by-foot square, give that to EQI lab, and they analyze it and tell us, okay, dust levels are good, not good. But then I have all these toys. One of the big culprits is vinyl products. We've got some vinyl mini blinds right over there. You were talking about, does paint decompose as it sits in the sun? And I wasn't sure. Vinyl will decompose as it sits in the sun. And vinyl mini blinds, vinyl products can have lead in them. We're getting smarter. We're taking the lead out. What does that say right there?
Vinyl made without lead additives.
Yeah, vinyl made without lead additives. I bought this vinyl mini blind in Walmart. I haven't gone to the mega one yet. I can't get myself to go there. But this says no lead additives. But they use it to stabilize the vinyl. So it sits in the window, starts to decompose. You get lead dust on there. Kids are ever on the windowsill playing. They love to open and close the blinds. They grab onto them, or even you as an adult. So we always look around for mini blinds. Here's a vinyl product. Who's got the microphone here? What does this warning say on that vinyl garden hose?
This product contains lead, a chemical known to the state of California to cause cancer and birth defects or other reproductive harm.
And it tells you wash hands after handling. So we look for other vinyl products. This is a double whammy because this has brass on it, which I'll get to in a minute. Let's stick with vinyl. Okay, I've got some Christmas tree lights. Here you go. What does that have to say on the Christmas tree light box?
Handling the coated electrical wires with this product exposes you to lead, a chemical known to the state of California to cause cancer, birth defects, and other reproductive harm.
Wash hands after use. It's always Proposition 65 passed in California recently. I'm not sure, maybe in the last 2-3 years. And now products are required to have labels if there's a certain amount of lead in them that's accessible to your hands. So they've done studies. Actually, EQI did a study on handling electric cords, and I have the study if anyone wants to look at it. And you know, they touched different products, and they did wipes on the people's hands to see how much lead came off, and if enough comes off. Right, you won't absorb it. But if you go eat a sandwich and don't wash your hands. Moral of that story? Wash your hands. Yes.
What about vinyl siding?
That's a great question, and I have made many phone calls to get an answer on that. From the best I can learn, well, it's kind of a longer answer than I can actually give right now. Vinyl siding currently made in the United States should not have lead if it says that it meets the ASTM TDM standard. If it doesn't say it meets the standard, or if it's imported from another country like Korea, it may have lead. But even though it says it meets the standard, what I learned was that to test the mini blind, the vinyl siding, they were using one of these little lead swab kits. And these are not EPA approved. So I actually talked to the Vinyl Association guy, and I said, you know, how are you sure that there's no lead in it? Oh, we test the siding. I said, well, how do you test it? He said, well, we use the lead swabs. I said, well, do you know that those aren't really okay? There's false positives, false negatives. You'd have to really send it to the lab. He said, well, that just would be overkill because we know there's no lead in the product. Sounds suspicious to me. But if it says that it meets the standard and it's made in the United States, then it shouldn't. I also couldn't get any answer from him about was it used in the past? When did they stop using it? I couldn't get an answer.
Does that have any effect on humans, like it being on the house as far as,
How might it?
I don't know, I was wondering about the solar, the energy coming through that, would that, the same way, would it decompose faster and things like that?
If it was on the outside of the house, the sun's beating down on it, start to break down, you'd end up with dust on the surface. So even just touching the side of the house, putting your hands in your mouth, or if you were tearing the siding off, put something else on, dust. So yeah, it could. Good thinking. Vinyl records? Great question. Never thought about it.
Tons of records, and I never thought about it either, but.
I would wash my hands after using them. Right. How much smarter would we all be? Other vinyl products, there was an electrician that had a really high lead level. They followed him around. He had a habit of chewing on these things. And so they first thought it was the wire. So they tested the wire and like, no, it was the vinyl coating. The other thing that, well, brass products. They add lead to brass to make it stronger so it doesn't bend. And one of the culprits that we always ask about in homes are car keys. They have a nickel coating on the outside, and some of them are aluminum, but some of them that have that yellow on the inside, that's brass. So a child putting them in their mouth, or you handling your car keys and not washing your hands. Somebody playing with this, drinking out of this garden hose. Sometimes people have brass faucets. Not a good idea. They look pretty. Nah, it's not good. Brass fittings in your water system. So again, we would want to test water. Something that back to your pottery issue here. I actually, a few months ago, UNCA had a big flea market over at Highsmith. Anyone go to that? May have been during the summer. I think it was during the summer. So I went over there to the yard sale, and I bought this. I looked at that one. I bet that's leaded. So I went and got my little trusty lead swab you can buy in Lowe's for $4 a pack of 2. Not 100% accurate, but they kind of work most of the time. I rubbed it on the surface of this, and it turned bright red, which means that there's lead leaching out of this glaze. So I look around for imported pottery. Does anybody here have any pottery that they use, maybe from India or China or Mexico or Peru? Okay, this might be, these tests are not the most accurate if you're eating out of them a lot and you really value it. The lab can do a ceramic test for you. It's like $14, I think. Basically, you have to put vinegar in your pot, leave it for 24 hours, pour the vinegar out into a bottle, and take it to the lab. But I would be very cautious. It has to do with the temperature that this is baked at when they put it in the kiln. The temperatures are not high enough. The lead is able to leach back out of the glaze. Most of the potters you guys visit here in Asheville, they are able to heat the pottery up to a high enough temperature that there might be lead in the glaze, but it shouldn't come out in your food. But things like this that are handmade other countries, warning light. That looks harmless enough. What does that say on the back?
May contain lead for external use only.
May contain lead, external use only. How about this one?
Lead-free pewter.
Lead-free pewter. I bought this in Kmart maybe 8 months ago, and it says may contain lead. I went back recently. I didn't see any of the old jewelry that was there 8 months ago, and I bought this at Ben Franklin, but in the store in another store, I found something that said lead-free pewter, and in Kmart, I actually saw, the only jewelry I saw said lead-free on it. Lots of children's jewelry has been identified as having lead in it. Zipper pulls, some of the keychain toys, rings, bracelets, stuff you buy from Claire's Boutique, Walmart, Kmart, has been found to have lead.
And they may have taken them off the shelves here and just exported them to developing markets.
Yeah, I don't know. I was glad not to find it. I need to learn more about what's going on. And I'm running out of time, aren't I? It doesn't have to be really expensive stuff for repairs. You know, some of this stuff is an easy solution. Get it out of a child's reach. If it's more complicated, like paint and water, a water filter, it doesn't have to be super expensive. If it's paint, you need to repair the peeling and chipping paint, and there's some safe and inexpensive ways to do it. You might cover over a surface. You might plant vegetation on a contaminated soil area. So it doesn't have to cost a lot. Yes?
Like when you're getting your ears pierced, like infants getting their ears pierced, do they use like, I could see how it would bleed and it would go directly into the blood. I'm sure they don't use lead like studs.
Yeah, they usually use
But
sterling
silver.
or stainless steel.
Stainless steel.
Which I think is okay.
Okay.